For today's video, we're going to talk about simplifying fractions, why we do it, and how we do it. So I'm going to start off with just a simple fraction of 4/8. Now 4/8 is something that we can hopefully visualize if we take a circle and cut it into 8 pieces as equal as we can. Having 4/8 of them means we have, well, 4 out of the 8 pieces. But when we are working with fractions, it's usually best to simplify them. And simplifying 4/8 means we're going to change it into the fraction 1/2. Now, why do we simplify? Well, a lot of the times, this simplified version is a lot easier to understand. 4/8 isn't bad by itself, but if we take that same circle and only cut it into 2 pieces, and only have half of it, well, we still have the same amount, and this is even easier to understand. And still, if I were to give you the fraction 34/51, I really don't feel like taking a circle and dividing it into 51 pieces. So this one is much harder to visualize, so we could simplify this down to 2/3, which is much easier. So that's why we simplify fractions, to make it easier to understand what they're talking about. Here's how we do it. When we're working with 4/8, we already know that its simplified version is 1/2. But here's how we go about getting to that simplified version. We take our numerator and our denominator, and we make a list of the factors that could create those numbers. So for 4, we could have 1 times 4, or we could have 2 times 2. Both of those numbers give us, or both of those problems give us an answer of 4. We do the same thing with our denominator, so 8. So we could have 1 times 8 and 2 times 4. Now that we have a list of our factors, we want to find the factor between the two of them that is the largest and that they both have in common. So basically, we want to find what is called the GCF, the greatest common factor. So looking at these factors, they both share 1, they both share 2, but the greatest factor that they have in common is 4. So since they both share the common factor of 4, and that's the largest one, we then divide the numerator and the denominator by that greatest common factor. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, 8 divided by 4 is 2. And that gives us our our simplified form. Let's try another one now. Here we have 15/20. So if I list out my factors that give me 15, I've got 1 times 15, I've got 3 times 5, and those are my factors that give me 15. Okay, if I list out my factors of 20, I have 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. Those are all the factors that give me 20. Once again, let's compare our factors to find the largest one. They both have 1. They both have 5 as well. And that 5 is the largest common factor that they have, so that's what we're going to divide by. 15 divided by 5 and 20 divided by 5. So this gives us 3, and this gives us 4. So the simplest form of 15/20 is actually 3/4. Now you may be wondering, how am I supposed to come up with these factors? Well, if you know your multiplication facts for these numbers, you should be able to make them, or you might want to look off of a factor chart. There are factor charts online that you can search for and use. If you're in my class, I've provided you with one that you can use at any time. So coming up with those factors should not be too difficult, especially for the numbers that we're starting off with. Now, let's take a look at another example. Here I have the fraction 17/26. If I start to create my list of factors for 17, all I have is 1 times 17. That's because 17 is what is known as a prime number. The only factors that it has is itself and 1. Now for 26, I would get 1 times 26 and 2 times 13. It does not have any other factors, and take a look at our list of factors. What is the greatest common factor that they already have in common? Hopefully you say to yourself, well, all they have is 1. And you're right, that is the only factor that they have in common. 17 doesn't have 26, 2, or 13, and 26 doesn't have 17. So they are already in simplest form. We cannot simplify this. So sometimes you will run into fractions that you can't make smaller. And that's okay. Because we've proven that all they have in common is 1. All right, let's do one more, make it a little bit tougher, and this one will be simplifiable. So for our final example here, we have 24/60ths. This is a simplifiable fraction. It is not currently in the simplest form. So start making a list or look at your factor chart of what the factors are that make up 24 and 60. See what you can come up with on your own. Pause the video and try to come up with as many factors that give you 24 and 60 as you can. Well, if you've paused the video, you've hopefully come up with some of these, maybe not all of them, but for 24, we've got 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. Those are all the factors of 24. Now 60 has a bunch, so hopefully you've come up with some of these. We got 1 times 60, 2 times 30, 3 times 20, 4 times 15, 5 times 12, and 6 times 10. That's a lot of factors to go through. But remember, we want to find the biggest one that they have in common. So they both have 1, they both have 2, they both have 3, both have 4, both have 5. Nope, just kidding. They do not both have 5. They do both have 6. But the biggest one that they both share is 12. They both share the factor of 12. So if we divide both numbers by 12, we can get our simplest form. So 24 divided by 12 is 2, and 60 divided by 12 is 5. So the simplest form of 24/60ths is 2/5, which not only is easier to say, but it's easier to picture in our heads. And that is how you simplify fractions.